Today we will discuss another previous CAT RC passage from my book, Wiley's CAT VRC book. In chapter 9, I have tried to explain the technique of mental summarizing and active reading. So we will discuss this same technique as we go through a previous CAT passage. I'm giving you the title in advance so that you get an idea about what the passage is about. The dialectic of human perception and creation in art. So the technique of active reading is nothing but thinking as you read and connecting up the ideas of the author together, seeing how he has developed his ideas para by para. So let's start with this passage. Each one has his reasons. For one, art is a flight. So we're talking of art having a reason, an artist having a reason, right? For another artist, it is a means of conquering. So at this stage, it sounds a little, vague, but one can flee into a hermitage, into madness, into death. One can conquer by arms. Why does it have to be writing? That means one can do all these things by other means, but why do it with writing? Why does one have to manage his escapes and conquers by writing? So, writing obviously is literary art, right? So, through writing, how do you fly? How do you let's say escape from? So, escape means escape from reality. Okay. So you fly away from reality. So by writing, if you write a fictional book, or a book on fantasy, you are escaping from reality. And how are you conquering reality? By actually creating a fictional story in which real life characters you bring to life in your book, or a biography or an autobiography. So, as a literary art, aim could be to escape from reality or to conquer reality, because behind the various aims, so he's just given two aims. So behind the various aims of authors, there is a deeper and more immediate choice which is common to all of us. Now, us means the author is an artist, a writer maybe, or a painter, and he is trying to discuss what are the aims of writing or of creating art. So he's talking about deeper and more immediate choice. We shall try to elucidate this choice, this more deeper and immediate choice. So probably that's what he is trying to discuss in this passage, and he is announcing it. We shall try to. It could be, this could be an artist who's in front of an audience of artists, probably addressing them this way. So that's why he's making his intention very clear that this is the primary purpose of my, let's say, talk, or whatever this RC passage is about. So we should try to elucidate this choice, and we shall see whether it is not in the name of this very choice. Now, whatever that choice is, we don't know. It's not escaping from reality or conquering reality. It is some more deeper and immediate choice, right? That the engagement of writers must be required. That means writers must make a choice of creating their literary work because of some deeper choice. Having said that, so you're in suspense that there is some choice he's going to talk about. Then he uh, goes on to say, each of our perceptions is accompanied, each of our means us human beings, maybe us artists, right, is accompanied by the consciousness that human reality is a revealer. Okay, that is, it is through human reality that there is being, or to put it differently, that man is the means by which things are manifested. Okay, let's see how this idea is being developed. It is our presence in the world which multiplies relationship. it is we who set up a relationship between this tree and that bit of sky. So that means human beings as conscious beings, assuming that the other animals are not conscious like we are, and we can communicate and express what we feel and what we see and everything. So it is our presence in this world, and we are the means by which things are manifested. And thanks to us humans, that star which has been dead for millennia, that quarter moon, that dark river are disclosed in the unity of a landscape. So it is because of us that we are aware of the world around us, the sky, the distant moon, the star, and whatever nature has to present, right? It is the speed of our aeroplane. So if we are traveling by auto, we perceive what we see around us at a different way, in a different perspective. When you are going through in an aeroplane, the whole whatever we see is organized in a different way. From top to bottom, we see land, river, mountains, right? Which organizes the great masses of the earth. So it is we people around here who are able to see and perceive what's there around us. With each of our acts, the world reveals to us a new face. Why a new face? Because we are seeing it while traveling in a car in the mountains. We are sitting on a beach and gazing at the ocean, or from a building we are looking. So from different places, different parts of the world we see uh, as we are moving, as we are sitting. So we see the whole mass of the world around us organized in different ways. That is why painters, let's say, painting a landscape, he sees it and then captures that reality on a painting. Or an author creates a descriptive scene before he shows the action of the actors. So he is capturing that reality there. But if we know that we are directors of being, we also know that we are not its producers. So he earlier said human reality is a revealer. That means we can reveal what others have, what let's say God has made, and even other men have made buildings and other things. So we see all that. So whatever that is created already, that we can reveal. So we are directors of being. So it's using all kinds of technical jargon, philosophical way of expressing. So you got to be used to this kind of language. So this only comes through again familiarity with philosophical, intellectual kind of writing, as we saw in chapter 5 when we did 3 reading tasks. So, but if we know that we are directors of being, we also know we are not its producers. That means we have not created this, we have not produced this earth, this world, this sky, these mountains, this river, this landscape that we see before us, these beaches, this ocean, right? If we turn away from this landscape, it will sink back into its into its dark permanence. At least it will sink back. There is no one mad enough to think it is going to be annihilated. So if I, as a human being, close my eyes or turn my face away from nature's creations as I see it, uh, that now there's nobody to reveal it because I've closed my eyes, right? But obviously it is going to stay there. It's not going to be annihilated. That mountain, the sky, the ocean, everything is going to continue. It is we who shall be annihilated. We human beings who, let's say, can reveal it while we are alive on this earth. If someday we are going to die, but still the earth will remain the way it is. That mountain and sky are not going to vanish because that's been created as a permanent feature of the earth, right? Until other consciousness, means other people, human beings, comes along to again awaken it. So the point is making in second para Thus, to our inner certainty of being revealers is added that of being inessential in relation to the thing revealed. That means we understand that we are certainly the people, the conscious beings who can reveal what has been created by God or by nature, but we have not created it. So we are inessential in relation to the thing created. So now how does this match with that deeper or more immediate choice which is common to all of us? But there he was talking of trying to write a book or create maybe a literary behind aims of authors. Authors are creating new things. So this doesn't somehow seem directly linked with that. Anyway, let's move further and see how his thoughts are developed. So, after the second para, where he says that human beings are revealers, but they realize that they have not created it, so they are inessential to the world, the sky, the mountain, other things that they are revealing as conscious beings. So, the third para says one of the chief motives of artistic creation. So, now it seems to somehow come together. One of the chief motives of artistic creation is certainly the need of feeling that we are essential in relation to the world. So he just ended the last line of para 2 by saying that we are certain that we are inessential to the thing that we have revealed. That means, as revealers, as when we perceive the world around us, we can, let's say, reveal it as conscious beings, see its beauty, appreciate what's there, right? But in our heart of hearts, we know tomorrow we are not there, that will continue, so we are inessential. We didn't create it. So next para says one of the chief motives. Now this seems to be that deeper and more immediate choice. So the chief motives of artistic creation is certainly the need to feel essential in relation to the world. That means this is a world created by somebody else. Let me also create some artistic, let me write a book, literary work, or let me paint a painting, right, which will be part of this world. And therefore, when somebody, if I want to, if I see that painting, I know I am essential to that painting's existence. It wouldn't have come into existence and been part of this world had I not been to create it. Similarly, I, as an author who's, let's say, authored the book Wiley's Cat VRC book, when I see that book, I feel this wouldn't have existed had I not sat down and created it. So that gives me a feeling of being essential because I have created something, right? So this seems to be his main point, that one of the chief motives of artistic creation is to feel essential. That means if you were not there, this part of this world, this book or this painting would not have been there. Okay, so let's read further. If I fix on canvas or in writing, so if you see so far, uh, there is description in between, then he says his main point. So if you can, separate the grain from the chaff. So I've been, putting in bold what is the essential. So this one of the chief motives of artistic creation, that is in bold. Now it's all explanation. If I fix on canvas or in writing a certain aspects of the field or the sea or a look on someone's face, which I've disclosed, I'm conscious of having produced them. See, earlier he was a revealer, now he's producing them because he's painting them, he's writing about them. So he has produced them by condensing relationships, by introducing order where there was none, by imposing the unity of mind on the diversity of things. So he has put that in certain perspectives, some relationships together in his painting or in his writing. That is, in other words, I think myself essential in relation to my creation. So you feel, so that is why you are trying to create. But that is why an artist tries to create. Okay, good. So now it makes sense, all the three paras up to here. Let's see what happens later. But this time it is the created object that escapes me. That means, let's say I've written a book or made a painting, but that is the created object. How does that escape me? I cannot reveal and produce at the same time. Okay, that means something I cannot. Earlier I was revealing the world, but I had not produced it. Now I have produced a painting, but I can't reveal it. What is it? What is that? That doesn't make sense right now. The creation becomes inessential in relation to the creative activity. So that means creation or the created object becomes inessential. So it's playing around these words of essential, feeling essential, right? Inessential. Now this point is not so clear up till now. The creation becomes inessential in relation to the creative activity. How? Let's read. First of all, even if it appears to others as definitive, the created object always seems to us in a state of suspension. Us means us artists. Let's say I'm Leonardo da Vinci, I painted Mona Lisa, so it's a created object. People who see it, they find it clear, uh, clear object, a clear painting, complete in itself. But for us, for Leonardo da Vinci, who has created it, he is for him it's in a state of suspension, as it is still work in progress kind of thing. We can always change this line, that shade, that word. Thus it never forces itself. A novice painter asked his teacher, when should I consider my painting finished? And the teacher answered, when you can look at it in amazement and say to yourself, I'm the one who did that. If Leonardo da Vinci could look at Mona Lisa and say, wow, what a thing I've created, damn it, what perfection, then you can say that your painting is finished. But then, how does it relate to the created object having being inessential? So things are still a little fuzzy. Let's move on to the next para. So now we are continuing on to the fourth para. So when can a painter consider his painting complete? When he can say in amazement, right, which we just saw, which amounts to saying never. That means you are never able to see it finished or complete. It will remain in a state of suspension. Why? Because he's saying, for it is virtually considering one's work with someone else's eye and revealing what has been created. So if you have created, if Leonardo da Vinci has created Mona Lisa, can he see it with somebody else's eyes and reveal Mona Lisa? Let's see what he says. But it is self evident that we are proportionately less conscious about the thing produced and more conscious of our productive activity. So, Leonardo da Vinci is more conscious about all the process that went into produce Mona Lisa. He is less conscious of the end product, Mona Lisa, which still remains. Oh, yeah, I could have, put a shade here. Maybe one curl of hair coming over the ear could have added a certain touch, given a certain, uh, you know, willfulness of Mona Lisa or something. So the productive activity, the thinking process that went into creation, all that is still active for the person who's created it. So the created object doesn't appear like a final creation. That is why he can never say in amazement, wow, this is what a perfect thing I've created, right? So this is what he's saying. Let us see. When it is a matter of poetry or carpentry, we work according to traditional norms with tools whose usage is codified. It is Heidegger, so some philosophers famous, they who are working with our hands. So when we are, poetry, carpentry based on some rules and some design. So some designer has given me the diagram, I'm a carpenter, I'm making it according to that. But when I'm creating my own thing, then I am deciding everything, right? So in this case, the result can seem to us sufficiently strange to preserve its objectivity in our eyes. But if we ourselves produce the rules of production, so when Leonardo da Vinci made Mona Lisa, he didn't have a design made by somebody else, right? He decided the rules of production, the measures, the criteria. And if our creative drive comes from the very depths of our heart, then we never find anything but ourselves in our work. So Leonardo da Vinci was part of it, part of himself went into the work of making Mona Lisa. If it is we who have invented the laws by which we judge it, it is our history, our love, our gaiety that we recognize in it. So for an artist, he's seeing all this, he's not seeing the finished product. So he cannot reveal it, he cannot see it from somebody else's eyes. He can only see it from his own perspective and the creative process through which. So he is more conscious of the productive activity that went into creating it. Even if we should regard it without touching it any further, we never receive from it that gaiety or love. We put them into it. So whatever, so creative activity was the real end in itself. It is not Mona Lisa, that painting which others can enjoy and get the gaiety and love and appreciate it in all other ways. But Leonardo da Vinci cannot get that from that painting. Okay, this is what this is the kind of perspective he is developing here. So the results which we have obtained on canvas of paper never seem to us objective. Objective means from somebody else's eye, as a revealer, not as a creator of the created objects. That is why now the previous para makes sense, where he says the created object escapes us. Why it escapes us? Because we are only conscious of what went into making it, the creative activity that went into making it. So we are too familiar with the processes of which they are the effects. These processes remain a subjective discovery. They are ourselves, our inspiration, our roots. And when we seek to perceive a work, we create it again. So when he's looking at Mona Lisa again, he recalls what went into making it rather than the finished product, and what a quizzical smile I've been able to create, which people will really love. You can never know what Mona Lisa is thinking because of her quizzical smile, her enigmatic smile, right? So we artists repeat mentally the operations which produced it. Each of its aspects appears as a result. So now in the last line, he seems to be summing up. Let's just read this. This is the heart of what he has said so far. Thus, in the perception. So let's go back to para 1. Para 1 was about aims of authors. So you capture reality, you escape from it. So you've already mentally summarized as you went along. And then he said something about more deeper and immediate choice we will elucidate, which he later elucidated that the chief purpose is to feel, for an artist to feel essential and therefore indulge in creative activity and create some object, right? Then in the second para, he had talked about how human reality is a revealer. So that means in perceiving the world around us as conscious beings, we reveal the world around us. So thus in the perception, the object is given as the essential thing and the subject as the inessential. So in para 2, we saw the human reality is one of a revealer, and if I die, the world, the sky, the mountain is still going to be there. So the object is the essential thing. That's not going to vanish. I may die tomorrow, I may vanish, I may be annihilated, and I am not essential to making what is there, right? So as a subject, I am inessential to what I am revealing. I can only reveal it, I have not produced it. Then the latter, that is the subject. Subject means we human beings, and more specifically, we artists. So artists seek essentiality in the creation. So that is why the chief motive of artistic creation is to feel essential in creating something. So the artist seeks essentiality in creating paintings or literary works and obtains it. So he gets the feeling, yes, I'm essential now to this. This wouldn't have existed had I not made it. But then it is the object which becomes the inessential. So now for Leonardo da Vinci, that object, Mona Lisa, is inessential. Because whenever he sees it, he only sees the productive activity, the creative process, his love, his gaiety, all that thinking, all that creative energy that he put into it. He only sees that. He doesn't see the end product as other people would see it. So this somehow sums up. So he's kind of developed some kind of essential, inessential, some new kind of perspective to how human perceive things. And then why do they want to create it? Because they want to feel essential. But then whatever they have created becomes inessential. So it seems to be ending on a rather anticlimactic note. Let us see what he says further. Right. So he starts his last para by saying the dialectic. The means he has already talked about something which he is referring back to. Even in para jumbles, the definite article is very important link for linking up. So what he had just stated, thus in the perception, the object is given as the essential thing and the subject as the inessential. The latter seeks essentiality in the creation and obtains it, but then it is the object which becomes the inessential. So this play of ideas and this play of apparent contradictions, uh, you know, uh, that is what is called the dialectic. So that is what he is referring to as the dialectic. This interplay of how subject object become essential, inessential, perception, creation, which I just read out again for you. Now he's saying this essential, inessential in artistic creation, etc., is nowhere more apparent than in the art of writing. Why so? Because the literary object is a peculiar top. Top means lattu, which exists only in movement. Okay, what is he trying to say? To make it come into view, a concrete act called reading is necessary. So, a book, a literary object. So far we were discussing what he was saying in connection with the painting of Leonardo da Vinci and let's say Mona Lisa. Now we're talking of writing, which he started off. If you remember the very first para, he talks about writing. Why does it have to be writing, etc.? So let's take Vikram Seth, Suitable Boy now, right? It's a literary object. Now it comes into existence only if somebody reads it. So let's say I'm reading the book. So that concrete act of reading is required, and I read 10 pages. So till the time I'm reading those 10 pages, that literary object is like a lattu jo ghum raha hai, which is rotating around, right? The minute I shut down to go and drink a glass of water, the literary object is dead again, right? It is nothing but paper and black marks. So, uh, in the art of writing, in literary objects, the reader plays an important role because he has to actually indulge in a concrete act of reading to be able to make the literary object come alive. Like in the very first, in the second para, we saw human being as a revealer. You're looking at nature, the sky, the mountain, the dark river, or whatever that was mentioned there. So with your eyes, you're perceiving it, and other senses, you're hearing sounds, etc., etc. So there you could reveal all that. But a book, if you just look at it, is nothing but paper and black marks on it. So to get the essence, the literary object, the essence of that artistic creation, somebody has to sit and read it. So here even the revealer has to play an important role. You see, Vikram Seth was essential in creating the suitable boy. But if nobody reads it, then it is uh, just remains there. So to reveal it also, somebody has to go through the essential activity of reading it, right? So anyway, let's read further. Beyond that, there are only black marks on paper. Okay. So this dialectic of essential and essential, in the case of writing, the reader also becomes essential in revealing that literary object, because otherwise it's just uh, paper with black marks on it. So this is the additional touch, additional twist he's adding to the dialectic already developed, that in literary objects there is this additional twist that comes in of essentiality, though he doesn't use the word, but seems to be quite apparent. Now the writer cannot read what he writes. So again, he is now like the painter cannot, the created painting escapes him. He only thinks of the creative activity. So that's the same point now, probably in the case of a literary object he is trying to bring out. Now the writer cannot read what he writes. Whereas a shoemaker can put on the shoes, the architect can live in the house he has built, etc. Why can't a writer read what he writes? Let's say, why can't Vikram Seth open the book Suitable Boy and read? Because in reading, one foresees, one waits. Let's say I am reading it for the first time, so I foresee, okay, Lata has met Harish. Uh, or whatever, Kabir, sorry. So Lata has met Kabir and they've fallen in love. Oh, that's nice. So they're probably going to, so he's probably going to end up being the suitable boy selected for Lata. But you wait, you foresee the end of the sentence, the following sentence, the next page, and you keep reading to see whether what you thought gets confirmed, whether Kabir and Lata come together. He waits for them to confirm or disappoint his foresight. So when you are reading a novel as a reader, you are predicting. Just as when I was reading, in active reading, what do you do? As I was reading this passage, I was forcing what he'll say next, or at least waiting to see what he says next, to see how it fits in with what he has already said. Otherwise, everything seems so disjointed. So, similarly, here you foresee, you predict that he may say this, he may develop it in this way. Obviously, in this passage, I mean, nobody could have foreseen that he would come up with this dialectic of essential, inessential, and all that. But otherwise, when you read, you are able to foresee that, okay, he said this, and now he'll develop on it by first explaining this, then that, so that to a reader like me, it becomes clear. Otherwise, why am I reading it, right? So he foresees to confirm or disappoint his foresights. The reading is composed of a host of hypotheses followed by awakenings. So you hypothesize that this will happen. You may realize, oh, this has not happened, something else had happened. Oh, I've been deceived. Oh, there's still further hope, or whatever, right? So readers are always ahead of the sentence they're reading. So this is the whole idea of active reading. So I selected this passage to explain the technique of active reading, because this last para beautifully explains that reading involves reading, understanding what he has said, and then moving further, predicting what he is likely to say, how is likely and merely probable future which will emerge, then which sometimes may not emerge and may emerge, or in a different twist. So readers are always ahead of the sentence they are reading in a merely probable future, which partly collapses and partly comes together in proportion as they progress, which withdraws from one page to the next and forms the moving horizon of the literary object. So, this is such a long damn answer for the question. Now the writer cannot read what he writes. This is the reason why he cannot read what he writes, because there is no waiting for him. There is no future. There is no prediction to be made. He is not ignorant of what is to come. So therefore he cannot be objective. So Vikram Seth, when he reads his own writing, he knows every phrase, every turn and twist of the plot. He is aware of it. He remembers the whole productive activity, creativity that went into it is all in front of him when he's reading his book. So he's not waiting, okay, aage kya hoga? Tell me. Right? So there's no future he's looking forward to. He's not ignorant of what is going to happen. So this is why a writer cannot read what he writes, and therefore the created object again escapes him. He cannot enjoy his book like, let's say, I could. I read it twice. I enjoyed each time. It's a 1,000+ pages book, right? So this is what the passage is about. So in active, let's say in the technique of active reading, you should be able to para by para have bullet points in your head. First para about aims of writers, and then there's some deeper immediate aim. Then second para was about perception, human reality being revealer, and object essential, and human being inessential. So this kind of thing should be there in your head, summarized in your head. Then came third para, chief motivation for creating is to feel essential, the chief motives, right, for an artist. But then the object escapes him. Then the next para explains how the object escapes him because he's only absorbed with the creative process. And then that para ends by giving the whole dialectic that in perception, object is essential. The subject who's revealing it is inessential because he is not created. But in creation, let's say Mona Lisa or Vikram Seth, Suitable Boy, the artist, the subject is essential, but the object is inessential to the artist, right? It escapes him. So this is the kind of thing he has developed. So what was the primary purpose of the passage as a whole? To discuss a viewpoint. See, viewpoint, if some viewpoint exists, then you discuss it, which is known, and you're further discussing it. To present an argument, there's no argument he's presenting. He is just uh, playing around, coming up with the dialectic, the interplay of different contradictory aspects, right? And just seeing the beauty of it. So he's just intellectualizing. So he's developing a perspective on an issue. So a suitable title, as we saw, as I read earlier, would be The Dialectic of Human Perception and Creation in Art. So when you're creating art, in perception, you are, in creation, then you are essential, but then the object is inessential to the artist. But in perception, the object is essential and the person who's revealing it is inessential. So that is a perspective. That's not an argument. There's no, let's say, premise and a conclusion being reached. There's no, he's not, okay, he's analyzing, he's certainly analyzing, but if he didn't present this, so there was no existing complexity, then nobody would have seen it this way. You see? So to you analyze complexity of an issue when the issue's complexity has been stated by someone and then you are analyzing it. Here he is developing his own perspective over it, which is unique, which is not already stated by somebody. So the primary purpose of the passage is to develop a perspective on an issue. So the answer is 3. Right, let's come to question 2. Which of the following best states the central idea of the passage? Let's read 1. Artists want to feel essential by creating works of art. Yes, third para, first line. That's etched in your memory. Otherwise, all they can do is reveal others' creations, which is second para, where human realities are revealed, that sky, mountain, etc., etc. But they cannot perceive their own works of art objectively as others can. That is what the rest of the passage said. So one seems to be the central idea. Let's see other options briefly. When artists view things around them, they can be objective but are not essential. Okay. But with respect to their own work, they are essential but cannot be objective. So this also is kind of saying the same thing, but it doesn't use the word essential, you see. No, it does use the word essential and it uses the word objective. Okay, let's see the other option 3, sensing an inadequacy. Now, he's not highlighted anywhere that it's an inadequacy, that you, because you're inessential, so it doesn't mean you feeling a vacuum in yourself. So this is a catch in this. So sensing an inadequacy, artists create works of art to overcome this inadequacy, but then they cannot perceive what they have created. So inadequacy part is wrong in 3. Let's eliminate 3. 4. There are many aims of artists, but the chief aim is to feel important in relation to what they have created. Again, important and essential. You see, essential is necessary. I mean, you feel that you exist. Necessary for that created thing has to be. It's not important. So again, the word important doesn't capture essential. Inadequacy in 3 is wrong. Let's come back to 2 and 1. Between 2 and 1, when artists view things around them, it's not just artists, human beings, when uh, the human reality is that of a revealer, right? And but they are not essential. So you say this part, but they are not essential, that is not explained here. So this is a weakness in option 2. So when humans view things around them, they can see them, objectively, because it's somebody else's creation, but they are not essential, or they don't feel essential, or they are not essential to its creation. But with respect to their own works of art, the artist feel essential. So being essential and feeling essential now are two different aspects. So if you see option 1 says artists want to feel essential. So it's more a matter of perception than, are essential in, let's say, somebody's eyes, as if, you know. So therefore option 2, though a closed option, does not clearly state it like 1 does. Because artists want to feel essential by creating works of art. Okay. Otherwise, all they can do is, otherwise all they can do means it's not an inadequacy, but that's a limitation, let's say. That's all they can do is reveal others' creations, but they cannot perceive their own works of art objectively as others can. So this part about cannot perceive their own works of art, that means their own created art escapes them. And but second option says, but with respect to their own works of art, they are essential but cannot be objective. That thing about works of art escapes them, cannot perceive their own works objectively as others can. There is far greater clarity to the main point in 1 as compared to 2. So 2, I have made the option, so I know. You see, this passage had some limited questions made by CAD. I have eventually expanded the questions to about 10 because I found it to be a beautiful passage and worth capturing the essence of. So question 2 answer is 1. Option 2 is very close, but option 1 states it more clearly. Okay, coming to question 3. According to the passage, what are some of the reasons for our writers as artists to engage in the art of writing? So that we saw in the very first para about aim, to capture existing reality. He talked about conquest, then flights, escape from existing reality. So a writer can capture existing reality by actually capturing a thing in his writing, what he sees and perceives with his eyes, etc. He can create a world of fantasy by escaping from the real world, which may be harsh to bear. And the third, the chief, the deeper, more essential aim is to feel essential by creating a new reality, by creating something which does not already exist. That is what makes you feel essential. So here clearly option 1 emerges as the, similarly 2 option 1, 3 option 1. Let's quickly go through the other options. 2, to create a work of fiction and take the readers into a world of the creation. Yes, this is to an extent one of the aims, not while one captures all the three aims as discussed in the second and third para. To delve deep into human nature and show its manifestation in the behavior of the characters. This is now going beyond what the passage is saying. This is otherwise probably true, so but not in context of the passage. To reveal the tree, the sky, the moon, the river, and all of nature from their own perspective in their books. So this again is a trap because all these words appear somewhere in second para. So you may be tempted. So these are all option traps to trap you. So don't fall for them. Once you have understood the passage, you'll never fall for them. Question 4. According to the passage, why can't an artist ever consider his painting finished? So if you have mentally summarized and done active reading, you know it can never happen because the created object escapes him. He is only conscious of the creative activity. So these words are ringing in your head. So now let's see the options. No work of art is perfect and there's always room for improvement. So that's not what the passage is saying. It's only trying to talk about that he can't see it objectively because all comes to his mind is what that he can still change it if he wants, right? It's open to change. He can draw a line there, he can shade a little here, right? So it's in a state of suspension. That is what we read, right? So option 3 seems to be the one here. He is more conscious of the creative process than his creation or created object, and hence it remains open to change or in a state of suspension where he can, he feels now if I want, I can change this and get another, probably add to what I've already done. Whether it's adding or changing is not something that he considers not perfect or needs improvement. He is just that it's his, he can always change it and say something else through it. So 3 is the option why he does not consider his painting finished. Let's see other options all the same. 2, there's always some subjectivity which the artist has introduced and hence the painting can never seem objective. So that doesn't mean his painting is finished. So this doesn't answer the question. It is his creation and can't look at it in amazement and others can because he sees the flaws too clearly. So there's no mention of flaws, perfection, or improvement. So option 1 and 4 in any case are ruled out. Uh, 3 is the only option left, which is the correct option. According to the passage, why can't an author read what he writes? This is the last para, if you recall, where because he cannot foresee, there's no ignorance, he knows everything. Vikram Seth is trying to read his own book, right? So let's uh, put your mind in Vikram Seth's situation and read the options and see. Reading his own writing is boring because he knows what he has written. It's hardly boring. His whole creative process, his gaiety, his love that went into it, that is what is coming out. So he is so conscious of the creative process. So one can never be the answer. Reading his own writing brings to life the literary object, otherwise there would be. So that uh, so that doesn't explain why can't an author read what he writes. When others can read what he writes, why can't the author read what he writes? So this has nothing to do with that. 3, reading requires forecasting the future, evaluating it objectively. Now, why this evaluating it objectively? Yes, you predict that yes, Lata and Kabir, they make a good match. They're in love. Both seem level-headed, mature people. I wish, I wish they would come together. But you're evaluating all these outcomes of a novel objectively. You're just going with the flow of the writer and trying to see how he's developed his story and plot and with what twists and turns to keep the interest of the reader alive. So, for reading is an active process of discovery, of prediction and discovery. So, this seems to capture why an author cannot read what he writes while another reader can. Because the other reader is going through that active process of saying, okay, now they'll meet, then this will happen. Then he realizes, oh, no, but there's a problem there. Kabir is Muslim while she's a Hindu, so this may not work out. So then you discover something else and that process goes on, which the author cannot read what he writes because he knows there's no prediction for him, there's nothing to discover. He already knows everything from the beginning to the end. So, answer of 5 is 4. Question 6. The author holds that. That means these are his views, what the author holds or contention. So, there is an objective reality and a subjective reality. These terms now are alien to what we saw in the passage. Let's move further. Nature is the sum total of disparate elements. That was not what was the essence of what was being said. It is human action that reveals the various facets of nature. So this, if you recall, second para, it is the human that manifest what is nature around them. It's human action when they move in an auto or in an aeroplane that reveals different facets of nature seen from different angles and different perspectives, right? So, 3 is where human reality is that of a revealer, is being expressed, right? 4 apparently disconnected elements in nature are unified in a fundamental sense. I mean, right. uh, uh, Artist, when he creates, he may create relationships, different relationships, join things together. He may make a landscape with a hut and let's say some pasture where cattle are grazing. He may give some other elements, connect them in different ways. But 4 is obviously not what is said here, and one is very, very odd. Objective reality. What is objective reality? Is it what human reveal as in perception, and subjective reality is what they do in creation? But this is now how it has been expressed in any case, even if that may sound, yeah, possibly correct, right? When 3 clearly sounds correct and it matches with the it says exactly what the passage in second para says. So question 6 answer is 3. It is the author's contention that artistic creations are results of human consciousness. No, it is human consciousness is what allows human to reveal. The very act of artistic creation leads to the escape of the created object. Yes, Leonardo da Vinci created Mona Lisa and it led to the escape of Mona Lisa from him. He could only look at the creative process, he couldn't see the finished product. Man can produce and reveal at the same time. No, man cannot. An artist cannot reveal his own thing. If you reveal, you can reveal only what has been produced by somebody else. So man cannot be a revealer and a creator at the same time, which is absolutely clear from the passage. So 3 is absolutely contrary to what the passage has said. An act of creation forces itself on our consciousness, leaving us full of amazement. Uh, this forces itself is used in a different context in the passage, where the writer, the artist who's created his work, that work doesn't force itself on him. You see, that is what was said. So this again is a play of words, distortions to confuse the examiner. So question 8, the passage makes a distinction between perception and creation in terms of objectivity and subjectivity, revelation and action, objective reality and perceived reality or subjective reality, essentiality or non-essentiality of object and subjects. So if you saw in the second last para right at the bottom, let us revisit those words. I will read them for you rather than going back to that slide. Thus, in the perception, the object is given as the essential thing and the subject as the inessential. So let's see in this diagram that in the perception, object is the essential thing, and subject is inessential, because the sky, the moon, the whatever tree, etc., what is there of nature, that is created and already there. It exists. It is necessary part of the world around you. But the person who's revealing it, he will tomorrow die. The object will continue to live. Right? So he is inessential to that creation. He didn't create it. Right? He can only reveal it. So he is inessential. Now, that sentence said, the latter seeks essentiality in the creation. So the subject, the latter is the subject who feels inessential when he is revealing things. He wants to feel essential. So in creation, then he is essential. He is the artist who created a work of art. Right? So the latter seeks essentiality in the creation and obtains it. But then it is the object which becomes the inessential. So the object has now become inessential because the artist cannot see it as a finished product, finish it, see it objectively, right? But the whole thing, this dialectic is all about essential and essential. So while words like objective, subjective did come in, the essence of this very line, which this sentence, which in the second last para at the end virtually sums up whatever he has said, that is best captured in 4. So therefore, even in earlier options, when we talked of objective reality, subjective reality, all those are distractions, because this line is virtually the, like separating grain from the chaff, or the essential from the inessential. This particular sentence is the essential, the heart of the passage, right? Okay. Right, last 2 questions. I have this penchant for having 10 questions. A good passage like this deserves so many questions so that it really tests whether you've understood it properly or not. So, question 9, the art of writing manifests the dialectic of perception and creation because. So, if you see the very first line of the last para, it said the dialectic is nowhere more apparent than in the art of writing. So, your question is, the art of writing manifests the dialectic. How? In which way? Or because? Because of what? Right? And the next line after in the last para, it said to make it come into view, a concrete act called reading is necessary. That means reading is what makes the book come alive. So reading becomes essential. So that is part of the twist in this dialectic of perception and creation, that in the case of writing, another aspect, a concrete art of reading is what makes its dialectic, this interplay of contradictions and ideas even more interesting. So let us see the options. Reading reveals the writing until the act of reading lasts. Writing to be meaningful needs to be meaningful. Now, Meaningful is not the word that is matching the context. This art is anticipated and progresses as a series of hypotheses. This literary object has a moving horizon brought about. So obviously 9 answer is 1, because reading reveals the writing. So that means the concrete act art of writing manifests this dialectic, because a concrete act of reading is required to reveal the writing. Otherwise it's just black marks on paper. And it only lasts as long as you read. If you close the book, again it's black marks on white paper. The minute you start reading it, it again comes to life. The minute you stop reading it, it again is paper with black marks. So this literary object is revealed only through reading. Somebody has to read it to make it come alive. Otherwise, nothing but a dead object. So option of 9 is 1. So reading therefore becomes essential. Now let's see the next question. This will be clearer. A writer as an artist. Now what does he do? So again we are focusing on the last para. How the writer plays a role. He reveals the essentiality of revelation. This is again nonsense, just playing with words. Makes us readers feel essential vis-a-vis his literary work. It's only readers through the concrete act of reading can feel, they feel essential when they are reading this book, that I am bringing this book to life. Only I can bring this book to life as a reader. If I don't read it, if I just look at it, it is just paper with black marks. So I have to read it. So a person who educated, literate person only can reveal it. A child cannot, who hasn't, who's not literate or illiterate person cannot reveal it. So readers feel essential. So the writer, he makes us readers feel essential vis-a-vis his literary work, because we have got to put in that extra effort of reading it as a concrete act. So obviously answer of 10 is 2. A writer as an artist creates reality, creates probably a new reality which doesn't already exist, reveals nature in its permanence. That's nonsense. So with this we have covered the passage. In this passage, if the topic is so unfamiliar, in the first reading you will not be able to mentally summarize or be able to follow the flow. This will need a second reading. And then, if you cannot mentally summarize, note down points. Initially you need the support of a paper and pencil to, even if you scribble the points as you are reading without even reading what you're scribbling, right? Or if you have a book, you can underline the essential from the inessential. So active reading is basically about being able to sift the grain from the chaff. Grain is the essential thing which you need to make wheat and roti, etc. The chaff, the chilka, the husk, that is to be thrown away, right, or put as fodder for other animals. So here in this writing, all the long explanations that he has given, there are he has very few points. It's actually come to think of it, in such a long passage, there were very few areas which were the key ideas were summed up in. The rest was lengthy explanatory notes. So similarly, when you are summarizing also in para summary questions, right, it is again essential items. What are the main points? So this mental habit of uh, separating the main ideas from the explanations and the rest of the background information, etc. This is the most important habit to form if you want to crack RC. Thank you.